Okay, YouTubers, this is the Angryprepper. Today's video, we're going to talk about preparing like a war is coming, right? And we're talking about preparing for anything and everything, including war. The reason why I say this, I'm using this sort of like a term, right? Because the war that we are seemingly looking at or could possibly happen is World War III. There's also nuclear war, and then there's war with China in 2025, according to a general. I'm going to do a separate video on that. Should we be worried to death about any of these wars? No. Absolutely not. What you should be worrying about is your preps. And how much do you have? Are they still good? Do I have to cycle them out? Should I refill the waters or dump the waters? Should I renew some of my prepper gear? These are things you should be worried about. Not so much worried about, but just have it in a checklist and make sure you hit them. We shouldn't be worrying ourselves sick, guys. We shouldn't be looking at certain YouTube channels, if not a lot of them, and wondering if today's the day we're going to die because they said so, right? So we need to get away from shit like that and focus on real fucking shit like prepping. Guys, preparing like a war's coming could mean a bad winter storm that can last in your area for a couple of days, which then turns into a week or two of no power, no heat, and things of that nature. Actual war coming, right? I mean, hell, if you live overseas somewhere and the shit is on, you might have to actually be preparing for war. And in a lot of those cases, if you are in the city or country where that war is, you have to start thinking about leaving, evacuating, bugging out, whatever you want to do. And nonetheless, guys, we should always be prepping and we should always be concerned with our preps, not so much what's happening on the outside. Yes, keep tabs of what's going on. You know, look at the news and go, all right, this shit's getting real over there. Okay, this could spark the Great War of 2025. Because if we go to war with China, I think that's going to be one of the greatest wars ever, especially if we have boots on ground in China. That'll be the possibly the biggest war the world has ever seen, because we're talking about China now. But anyway, with that, guys, there are a lot of things you need to stay focused on with prepping. And again, first and foremost is your food and water. You have to make sure that is squared away. You have to make sure a lot of that is not spoiled, not old. You definitely got to cycle out your water, I would say, every couple of months, because I've gone actually 5 years without changing my water out just to test it, and it was fine. I drank about like a whiskey shot, if you will, and nothing. No stomach pains, no problems, and the water was treated. The water was treated, by the way, but that's a different story. Now, guys, as far as preparing is not just getting food, water, flashlights, batteries, money, silver, gold. It's not just that. It's training as well. You can gather all these supplies, guys. If you have zero training, you are going to fall apart. Period. If you don't have any direction with your preps, you're going to fall apart. You have to have training. You have to step up your training, guys. That's something that we all as preppers need to do. You have to step up your medical training, your home protection training, your firearms training, your survivalist training, outdoors, I mean, in case your whole plan falls apart and everything transitions to outside, right? You have to have your homesteading. And there's a ton of categories in homesteading that you need to be proficient in, just in case, again, the power goes out and you're in the dark ages. Yes, you might have a generator. That's only going to last you so long, especially if you're running on gasoline. And even your solar generator, which is probably going to last you a little longer than a gasoline generator, but at some point that might break down too. Keep in mind, guys, anything mechanical, anything electronic is going to break down over time. Now, if you can fix those things, great. But if you can't, you're shit out of luck. Now, I always push solar banks or solar power banks because they will outlast a generator, a gas generator, because the renewable source is the sun. A gas generator runs on gas, and if you don't have a lot of gas on hand, or you wind up running out or burning through it, or some of it winds up going bad, then you're assed out. So solar banks actually make a better generator in that sense. And like I said before, they've gotten better over time. But that's a different story for a different day. Now, also, guys, we're stepping up the training, hunting, gardening, and cooking, right? Those three go together. Hunting and cooking, obviously, you hunt, you kill an animal, you can cook it, and with your garden, you can put vegetables with that meal, right? So you have to be proficient in those skills as well. Protection is important, but cooking, gardening, and hunting are also important as well. Fishing, another skill that you want to hone in on. A lot of these things, guys, these are a lot of skills you need to have because we weren't raised, a lot of us weren't raised with these skills. We weren't born into land and had to hunt for our food and fish for our food. Yes, some of you guys were raised with your fathers and he took you out hunting or fishing. But for a lot of us who were born and raised in the city, we didn't have that opportunity. So we have to go out and learn how to do those things. Like fishing, I'm simple at fishing. Just cast a line and hope for the best. But there is a skill to fishing. There is a skill to hunting. So nonetheless, guys, these are things you want to hone in on, because when the shit is on, guys, what are you left with, right? You're left with yourself. You're left with depending on yourself and not the government. Listen, there are going to be a lot of people who are scared, who are going to be dependent on the government, and they're going to go with the government. They're going to get in the back of the trucks or whatever it is, and the government's going to take them to some fucking safe zone, and they're going to huddle them there. So, that being said, guys, you are going to be relying on yourself. Now, I am going to do a prepper movie critique on a TV show, one episode, The Last of Us. Very good TV show, by the way. The third episode, which just came out, was an interesting episode about a gay couple, but the way they wrote it, even I couldn't argue with it. And you guys know where I stand with shit like that. Even I couldn't argue. I was like, it was written pretty good. But there was something about that episode that made it even more for us, preppers. And so I'm going to dive into that episode probably next week or later this week, rather, sorry, and talk about how well written it was, especially from the prepper aspect. It was done pretty well. So with that, guys, you don't want to be a part of the system. When the system starts breaking down, you do not want the promise of the system saying they're going to protect you and feed you. Fuck that. I'll take my chances back at home, back in my town, back on my own with my family. Because I know for sure I can keep the family safe at home and not in some quarantine zone or whatever zone they develop. Don't want my family to have anything to do with that. You are better off on your own, and you're better off protecting your family. Because if the quarantine zone or whatever zone they put you in gets compromised, now you're in a fucking free-for-all and you're racing and running around with everybody else. You don't want that. Right? So anyway, sorry. With that, guys, make sure your home's squared away. Make sure your preps are squared away. And keep preparing like there's a war. And if the war, or if the incident, or the disaster never happens, so be it. You figure we waste money on insurance every month, and we don't get into an accident. Some people go almost their whole lifetime without ever getting into an accident. So that money essentially is wasted. But at least with prepper shit, gardening, hunting, fishing, you can do that on your own. You can do that every day. You can eat that food every day, right? Your prepper gear, same thing. You can use that almost on a daily basis. I do. I use a lot of my bags and dump my bug out gear from it and just carry the bag around just to get used to the bag being on my back. Or I leave the prepper gear in it, the bug out gear in it, and I walk around with it. All right? So again, guys, that stuff we are not wasting money on because we use it. You can use it. Our insurance, you really can't. You pay some shit insurance company and you lose that money. It's a waste of money, to be honest with you, but that's a different story. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. Now, here's the one thing about training that I'm going to touch on real quick. Training, guys, you have to be put in uncomfortable situations during that training. Do not train and then, like, for example, you go to a class, and the class is held indoors, and they teach you first aid or stop the bleed. All right, that's fine. But you want to be put in uncomfortable situations, especially for survivalist or survival situations outdoors. You definitely want to be cold because you want to know what that's like. You definitely want to be able to struggle and know where your mindset's going to be and where your mindset's going to fail. Training, guys, will often test you. Real training will often test the shit out of you. That's the training you want. You don't want some half-ass bullshit, lazy training. You want training that's going to make you think whether or not you're going to survive the apocalypse. You want training to find out for you whether or not you're good enough for the apocalypse. And if you're not, you get better. If you fold under pressure, learn how to not fold under pressure. This is why you train now during these times, So you find out about yourself now and not during the apocalypse or during some disaster. You do not want to find out about yourself during the disaster, because it will compound the situation and you could possibly wind up dead because you gave up. If you think you're going to give up, at least you can train yourself now not to give up. So when it happens, you're ahead of the game. If you don't want to take a training course, guys, you can do it yourself. It's a little hard, but I have put myself in shitty situations on purpose by myself or with my group. And as you're doing it and you're sitting there cold, shivering, building your lean-to shelter, building a back wall for your fire, sitting there, taking time off because you can't feel your hands anymore, so you start walking around and getting it going until you can feel your hands and your feet, and then you go back to work, right? Or you sit by the fire for a little bit and warm everything up, and then you get back to work. But nonetheless, guys, putting yourself in an uncomfortable situation is needed to test who you are. I can't stress that enough, because there's a lot of people that seem to think that when the shit kicks off, they're going to be fine. If you do not know how you're going to respond to stress, you are not going to know what you're made of until that very moment. And that's fucking bad. You want to know what you're made of now, not then. All right, guys. Anyway, this is the Angry Prepper. Thank you for watching.